Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. And I would also like to thank Chris and the Leeds Atheist Society for inviting me to speak to you about Zoroastrianism. Before I proceed, how many of amongst you have heard of Zoroastrianism before today? Know anything about it? That's fair enough.
No, I don't.
I'm sorry? No, I've not quite heard of the Leeds Atheist Society.
No, I mean that it was all Leeds Atheist Society who put our hands up.
Oh, I don't know.
I think Freddie Mercury was Zoroastrianist.
Zoroastrian, yes. Sorry?
I was going to say that you should put that in Lisbon. Never mind, celebrity.
What you just heard a snippet just now are it's called the hymns composed by Prophet Zarathustra about 3,500 years ago in what today is eastern Iran, Afghanistan, and the Central Asian Republic of Tajikistan, in that vicinity. The language is called Gothic Avestan, and it's from the language family, it belongs to the old Indo-European, Indo-Iranian language, and it's a sister language to Sanskrit, the Avesta. The metrical composition of the Gathas, which are the hymns, or like this is a translation of one version of it. I can pass around later and have a look. And they are the original core and the fountain of the Zoroastrian religion. The prophet Zarathustra, I think as I've in the slides, he propagated his religion following a revelation which he had about 3,500 years ago. What you just heard, the snippet, was basically the introduction to the Gathas and beginning of the Gathas. And what it says is this: "Unto you, O Creator, the soul of Mother Earth complained thus, wherefore did you create me? Who gave life to me? Anger, rapine, outrage, plunder, aggression, and violence are everywhere. There is no protector for me except thee. Therefore reveal to me a Savior who would show me a way out of this difficulty." Thereupon the Creator Mother Earth asked Asha, "Who shall be thy Savior for the people of the world, so that we will be able to offer her, besides protection, fostering zeal as well?" What this particular verse is showing is the setting of what society was like prior to Zarathustra's revelation. Zarathustra was a prophet priest. The Zoroastrians have a hereditary male priesthood, similar to their cousins, the Hindus, or the Vedic Hindus, who are the Brahmins. And like the Brahmins, the Zoroastrian priests are trained to initially memorize vast chunks of text, religious text, at a very early age, and also learn the various rituals that go about furthering the harmony and the benevolence of God. Because the idea is that actually the word itself has got sacred power, and by performing the ritual correctly, it has benefits to the world and the environment as a whole. Now, Zarathustra came in an age where there was a belief in society of the belief in many gods. Zarathustra was not quite disturbed with the concept of many gods, but what he was disturbed about was that if I may just say, the various fan clubs. If I draw the analogy like, say for instance, you have the Premier League today, if those amongst you are soccer fans or football fans, you have different supporters. And said at times, in days gone by, when they used to go for hooliganism and various problems, this is how society, so to appease various, so they used to have a god, the sun, the moon, the stars, the various elements. And it was usually at times where might was right. Zarathustra was disturbed by it because he felt there's something wrong here. It should not be, this is not how it works. Eventually he sort of grew more distance from his society which he was living in, and eventually he decided to depart and happened to go through the mountains where he resided for quite a few years until one day he had a revelation. And in this particular revelation, it was that it was shown to him that there is by God, and whom Zarathustra gave a proper name, was Ahura Mazda. Following his revelation, Zarathustra came back to society and proclaimed what was revealed to him. Now, what was revealed to Zarathustra? Primarily, that the world and everything in it, the cosmos, was created by the one single creator, Ahura Mazda. It's a force. Mazda is truth, wisdom, light. Now, before I proceed, how many have heard of this word Ahura Mazda before? No? How many have heard of the word Ahura before? Mazda?
Probably out of
Car?
context, yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, it is not out of context. And that's what most of you find surprising. But it's a very classic case of marketing to promote a product. In this particular case, it's the car. Now, Mazda, as the God, is infinite, uncreated, is all-encompassing. Just try to digress. When the Japanese founder of the Mazda Corporation passed away, between the interwar years, the Japanese felt that it was important that their founder's memory was not forgotten, while at the same time the product had to be marketed globally. And if they decided to use the actual Japanese name of the founder, it was very difficult for them for the non-Japanese to pronounce, and hence the car will not sell. So what they looked around and said, let's pick up something close. And they came up with Mazda. And according to them, is the ancient Iranian god of light. And what they were signifying is this: by the Mazda car, it goes the speed of light. I'm not making this up. In fact, it's part of the Japanese, like the 1970s, in the Mazda Corporation in Austria, they'd done a booklet on the origin of the wheel, and they started with the Mesopotamia, how the wheel started, all that, then they come to Iran or Persia, and they decide and show that, and said this is what the whole idea is. And that's what appealed to them. Also, another factor, many of our grandparents' generation, especially those amongst you who are, or if at all come from the United States, the Edison light bulb, Mazda light bulb. Again, their marketing ploy was, buy the Mazda light bulb, it goes on forever. Because again, one of the definitions of God is omnipresent, it'll just go on forever. So that is another marketing aspect. But coming back to the matter at hand, when Zarathustra came back to society and he proclaimed there's one God. Now, those amongst, I don't know if I'm in the setting, I think, if I understand, is the atheist, I mean that you do not believe in God, or because the other day I was because I'm also part member of the Religious Education Counselling of Wales. I was speaking to my humanist counterpart, and he was explaining to me that no, the humanists are not quite atheists as such. So that's why I just wanted to clarify. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So I just wanted to. But what I'm trying to, why I asked that question, because in Zarathustra's society, because I believe in many gods, in his time to come out with the message, there's only one single creator, which is uncreated, was extremely radical. People felt that this guy was nuts. And not only that, which was much more radical, but he was proclaiming that God, the creator, is not might. You don't need your muscular sort of strength to further the belief. But what you require are your mental faculties, the intelligence, wisdom, and also that God is truth. Zoroastrians place a very strong emphasis on the truth. Because according to Zarathustra's revelation, what he proclaimed following the revelation was that the world was created for a purpose. The purpose was to entice evil out of its domain, which is a dark abyss, hell, to bring it into the world, which was prior created by God, and entrap it. And once it's entrapped, to defeat it. So Zoroastrians see their worldview is that the world created by God is a battlefield between the forces of good and the forces of evil. The creation created by God is there to assist God to defeat evil. And the way it defeats evil is by constantly performing good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. These are the only three requisites to defeat evil. Now, another radical thing, which is still radical in religious terms, where Zarathustra's worldview, or Zoroastrian worldview, that evil does not originate from God. In Zoroastrianism, we are not very clear about the origins of evil, like explanation given by other faiths. Zoroastrians, frankly, are not really bothered, because Zoroastrians see the creation, specifically humanity, as the frontline troops of God, who have volunteered to assist God to defeat evil. What they are informed as for the Zoroastrian text is this, that evil will be at the end of time defeated and annihilated. The way it will happen, it is this, that when the forces of good are just overwhelm evil. Now, why do Zoroastrians believe, because we are optimists, that evil will be defeated. Because, according to the Zoroastrian worldview, is this, that God is infinite. God grows. How does God grow? It is by humanity performing good thoughts, good words, and good deeds. Evil, on the other hand, is finite. Why is evil finite? Because evil cannot create. Evil can only destroy. Evil cannot do any good. It's the antithesis of everything what good, truth, life, wisdom, what God and the forces of good stand for. The Zoroastrian creation story is tells with that at the beginning of time, prior to creation, God, who is omniscient, i.e. all-knowing, inquired of the creation, specifically the human creation, do you want to be born? Why does God ask us that? It is because God knows that when one is born physically, you are in the battlefield from day one. And the casualty of this war is death. So God is asking all of us that whether do you want it born. Now, I was thinking, because I'm here, and everybody else is here, that I accept that many of you are not believers, but I'm just taking from my point of view as a Zoroastrian, I believe, from a matter of faith, that we agreed with God that yes, I'm willing to help you. Now in turn, because the reason God asks is God does not want to beat around the bush. He's telling us straight, this is what it is going to be like. You're going to be, from day one, in pitched battle against evil. Now, because we have agreed to be born, and God knows that part of the casualty of war is going to be death, God has given the whole creation, specifically the human, an individual soul, which stays immortal, because it comes from God, God is immortal, hence the soul is immortal. And that is how the creation will always be immortal. You are born physically, we die physically. Part of the war, the casualty of death, a casualty of the war. Why do Zoroastrians believe that death is a work of evil? We do not accept, I know again, we accept the cause of the natural death, etc., but from a religious perspective, Zoroastrians see things very much in black and white. We do not look at grey areas. Yes, reality life is grey, but there is absolutes of black and white. And the reason why death is seen as a work of evil, it is this, that the ancient Iranians felt that once you are dead, you're neutral. You cannot do anything. And therefore, it's only evil that triumphs when one is dead. Because to perform goodness, you have to be dynamic, therefore you have to be alive. The following death, because you have fought the war, the battle, and you're constantly meant to be doing good. Zoroastrian worldview is that on the dawn of the third day after death, your soul leaves the body and is judged by the divinities delegated by Ahura Mazda, God, to judge whether in your life, whether you've done, how much goodness you've done as goodness. Zoroastrians only believe in one single life. We do not believe in reincarnation. We only believe in going forward. Once something is done, it's done. It cannot be undone, no matter how hard you try. And we are informed that you are judged, and your soul is judged. And they say if it's 50.1% good, your soul ascends to heaven. If it's 50.1% wicked acts, wicked deed will descend into hell. The Zoroastrian hell is not hellfire, unlike other religions, but it is cold, damp, dark, lonely place. There, the soul stays till the end of time. What is the end of time? It's when good is overwhelming. And the last human being is born, the Savior, comes and makes evil impotent or inert. Because the Zoroastrians believe that at the dawn of creation, when evil penetrated the world as a force, it was helter-skelter and it was its maximum potency. From the very first human being performing the good deed, evil was on a losing wicket. And as time has gone along, evil is on the wane, because all of us have got a capacity to do good. And it is a cumulative goodness that will defeat evil. Once evil is made impotent or inert, commences the final judgment. What is the final judgment as per the Zoroastrian text? Is this: that the immortal soul will be accompanied or resurrected with the physical body. The physical body will be at a time when it is prime. Now, the ancient Iranians believed that your prime, when you're at the maximum, is in your late teens, early 20s. So whether you die at childbirth, or whether one dies, say, if I take 150 or 200 years, when you are resurrected, you will be at this sort of age. That's what seems the perfect age. Because God represents perfection. And the end of the world, once evil is defeated, is the new age, i.e. the perfection coming once again. So hence the resurrection. And there, the mountains will erupt into molten lava. From the very first human being to the very last human being, which is Savior, including the prophet Zarathustra, will undergo the ordeal of molten metal. And here, those amongst us who have done the different degrees of evil. So someone like Zarathustra, who's meant to be a role model, who's done 99.9% good, Zarathustra will not feel the pain of going through the ordeal of molten metal. It will feel like lukewarm milk. But those, depending on the degree, as we come down from 99.9% all the way towards 1%, will feel more of the pain. So in essence, I mean, the first time round, for instance, when you die, it's like the soul either ascends to heaven or descends to hell. It's very much like a driving test. You either pass or fail. In the final resurrection, your degree does come into it. And then you're all cleansed, and there's paradise on earth as in heaven. That's in a nutshell, what the purpose of a Zoroastrian life as a worldview is for all of humanity. Now, the key things from a history of religion, the Zoroastrians are one of the pioneers of this idea of the immortal soul, the final resurrection, the last judgment, and indeed the word paradise. The word paradise into the English language originates from Old Iranian, via Greek to Latin into English. Paradise, as for the Zoroastrian worldview, is a place that's temperate, that's not extreme. Zoroastrians see perfection as neither excess or deficiency. It has to be perfect. It has to be temperate. And an example of paradise in the ancient world were the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, known generically as Paradise Gardens. I don't know if you're aware, but the story goes that an Iranian princess married to a Babylonian king was homesick, and for the love of the princess, the Babylonian king called in the Iranian gardeners and built the Hanging Gardens of Babylon in a place, in a very harsh climate of that part. So it was like the origin of the national parks. The idea was that everything would be moderate, cool, fountains, color, things like that. That's how the Zoroastrians see heaven, perfection, things like that. That's in a very nutshell. Within this, I mentioned that the humans see themselves as allies of God in the cosmic battle against evil. We have an individual responsibility. As I said, Zoroastrians cannot blame anybody else. You yourself or we ourselves are responsible for our words, and our actions. Not only in the physical world, but also in the whole spiritual world. Because the forces of good and the forces of evil are not only fighting in the physical realm, but also in the spiritual realm. Zoroastrians see good or goodness as simple things like integrity, honesty, truth, righteousness. It's a matter of altruism that it is seen for the universal good, because you're all helping, but everybody has to help to bring in the defeat of evil. Now, one of the ways we are taught to remember what we are here for is that at a very young age, both boys and girls, instantly, Zoroastrians in this battle, Zoroastrians recognize that yes, physically the genders are different. That's obvious. But spiritually and mentally, they do not differentiate. They see them as the same. So both male and female are judged in the same way. Are judged the same way in how much goodness they perform in their life. And we are initiated at a very early age, from 7 onwards, 7 to 15, into what's called the garment of the good mind. It's called a sudra. This is a bit torn one, it's an old one, but what is signified, I'll pass it around and have a look. And we tie a sacred cord. Okay. It's not a string, it's a cord. I mean, it is, you can feel it's a coil. And the garment of the good mind, the sudra, is made from cotton, the plant kingdom. The kushti, or the advantageous path, is made from wool, the animal kingdom. The sudra has a few specific symbolism. Let's just take this one. In the front, it's called the pocket of good deeds, because if you turn the back, there's a small slit. When I pass it around, you can have a look. And what it signifies is this, that it's a symbolism, that this is the amount of good deeds you do are stored in this pocket. But what it's actually showing is this, at the rear is a larger section. It's a potential to do good deeds. So what is indicating to the wearer that how much good deeds you do in your life, relatively they're still negligible to what you can do. Your potential is still greater. And as I said, the Zoroastrians only look forward. So what it is this, the past is in front because we can see it. The wearer is the present in the middle, and the future is coming from the back to the front. It's also got other significance, things like it has got sort of various triangular here at the end, which signify the spiritual and the physical world are one. Whatever thought, word, and deed you do, the impact is not only the physical realm, but also the spiritual realm, and one must be mindful of that. Then there's another so significant, the other side, there's a straight line, i.e. that life, you go in a straight path, as such. I.e. what I mean, you go to the middle path, as opposed to the extremes of deficiency. The Kushti, for instance, here, is made from the 72 made from 72 threads initially. The 72 threads represent the 72 chapters of what's called the Yashna ceremony in the Zoroastrianism, and in which the 17 chapters are the chapters of the Gathas. Zoroastrians, like their initial Vedic counterparts, the Indo-Iranians, we come from an oral tradition. Writing came very much later into our tradition. Writing was not quite trusted because it could be changed. So things like the idea of that my word is my bond. Therefore, the importance of truth is important. Once you say something, you can never go back. So one must be mindful, because your thoughts are private. But usually, if you have a good thought, by extension, it goes into a good word, into a good deed. If the origin is a wicked thought, then by extension, it goes into a wicked word and a wicked deed. But at each time, it can be stopped. So one has to be mindful of what one does. Now, once again, this thing, so the other factor is that Zoroastrians see that the creation is in chronological order is a spherical sky, which is meant to be hard as a shell, like the metal or the crystal. Within it, floating at the bottom hemisphere is the water. Sorry, bottom hemisphere of the water. Floating above the waters is the spherical disk, the earth. The plant kingdom, the single tree, which is the initial single animal, which is in Zoroaster is a mythological sort of bull. Then a man is here gender-wise, and then lastly fire. Now, in this significance that we all know from our makeup of our body, you see above us is the sky, our body is also made of water, below us is the earth. By wearing the sudra, you have the plant kingdom, Kushti, the animal kingdom, us, we are human beings, and what makes us alive is the fire. It's again the wholeness. So it is the wholeness that is important to also keep on fighting the good battle. So there are other various significant. This is one of the time that's short, just giving you snippets of what the religion is about. In practice, the way of doing goodness, you can do things like charity, because making profit is seen as good, providing it's done the good, correct way. Because hard work is through honesty, and gaining money is seen as good. Having said that, one is meant to live a simple life as much as possible, a moderate life, a temperate life. And anything excess, you're meant to help others to further the cause of good and to defeat evil. Zoroastrians, we do not believe in fasting. At the same time, we do not believe in excess, because both excess and deficiency are work of evil. Having said that, many of us love our food, so we are quite overweight in many of our ways. We drink alcohol in moderation. We are social drinkers. Next week, on 21st March, is the ancient Iranian New Year, the vernal equinox, the spring equinox. Again, because the ancient Iranians, the Zoroastrians, we see life in a symmetry. Hence, the vernal equinox is the New Year. Why the spring equinox, not the autumn equinox? Because spring brings in life. Those amongst you who are familiar with the geography and the climatic region of what today is Iran, Afghanistan, Central Asia, autumn within brought in death, destruction, cold. So hence the Zoroastrians being so optimistic, the new year started with the world equinox. Zoroastrians also, as such, we do not convert religiously. We believe that one is born into one's religion. We accept that yes, in modern age, that religious proselytization and religious conversion, and for one to choose one's religion is fundamental part of the United Nations Human Rights Charter. Zoroastrians, we do not quite agree with that. Yes, but we do not stop anybody converting as such, because they're free to choose. But we believe it is wrong. Why? Because the Zoroastrians believe that religious conversion actually brings in strife. It brings in negativity, it brings in competition between religions. And at the end of the day, Zoroastrians see that all religions come from God. And they are all allies in fighting the good battle. And that is why in our ancient history, when Zoroastrianism was the imperial religion of the Iranian and the Persian empires, for over 1,000 years, from about 650 before the Common Era to about 650 of the Common Era, when the Iranian sway and the Persian sway stretched over to the borders of China, to Libya, Turkey, Yemen, Pakistan, to the Volga Basin. The important factor was that the Iranian kings who were Zoroastrians recognized people's inherent right to practice their own religion. So they did not forcefully convert them. As much as possible, discouraged them to become Zoroastrians as such. But in turn, this important thing was through dialogue. Zoroastrians believe that knowledge has to be shared. Because at the end of the day, the more education, the more knowledge, it is beneficial for all. On the cosmic level, it is beneficial for God because it increases goodness. And often in the history of religions, they do say that Zoroastrianism has contributed, as I mentioned earlier, to the concept of the immortal soul, the physical resurrection, the idea of the last judgment, and the paradise. Now, Zoroastrians have done this without conversion, because Zoroastrians believe that it is important that we show fellow humanity how to fish, as opposed to saying, you become part of us, then I'll share you my fish, or we'll show you how to build your house, as opposed to saying, come in and share my house. We are quite individualistic in many ways. Because as I said earlier, we are all responsible for our own thoughts, words, and actions. You mentioned earlier that the late Freddie Mercury was a Zoroastrian. Prime example, today we are a religious minority, one of the tiniest religions in the world. One of the reasons we are often, our people who sort of comment about us, they say the reason we are tiny is because we do not proselytize, we do not convert. In my opinion, they have forgotten a very fundamental aspect. In the last millennium, the Zoroastrian population totally depleted due to religious conversion. To us, following the Arab invasions of Iran of the 7th century, it was similar to what the calamity that faced the Indians of North America and South America following 1492 and Columbus and the conquistadors going there. The whole society changed. In the last millennium, because of certain aspects of where we believe that evil does not originate from God, is independent from God, we were treated as heretics. So hence, the option was that look, you either you change your religion or you die. So what we have today is that in Afghanistan, we do not have any Zoroastrians. In Iraq, we have a small community known as the Yazidis in Kurdistan, but they are treated as heretics by the other larger community. In Iran, we are a minority, about 30,000 in the deserts of central Iran. In Central Asia, which is Tajikistan, following the demise of communism, there is a bit of rejuvenation coming in ancient culture. But again, there's a competition between the forces which are coming in from the various sort of Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and to see, okay, which can be the strongest. So there is an importance. Zoroastrianism has been a religion often of the thinking people. So therefore, it does not give easy prescriptions, because we have to ourselves discern and decide what is good, because that is the only way we can move forward. I think with those words, I will sort of, I've gone over half an hour. But if you want to ask questions, feel free to do so, or any other questions you choose. Because I understand you've got all the phrases, policy, there's something I'm just reading in your thing. Yeah, question answer. No questions off limits here. So feel free to do so.
I was just wondering, you said the last person, the Saviour is born, now the last person born.
Yes.
So is it literally that second they're born, then the world is
No.
when it ends, or they have to grow up?
Well, we do not know when they will grow up, but the purpose of the Savior, and actually the word is the Savior. Again, it's like the paradise. The word is called the Sausha in Avesta, in old Iranian, and its literal translation is the Savior. The Savior will. We do not know what age but it will eventually. We suspect that because the ancient Iranians believed that the prime was when you're in your late teens, early 20s. So that's the way it will be the maximum strength, because evil will be so, once again, concentrated that no mere mortal human being will be able to, however goodness it does, to defeat evil. So this is like a superhuman being will come and defeat, and it's the allegory given that it will be in the shape of a dragon, will come and decapitate the head of the dragon. And many versions, like the idea of the Saint George and the dragon, which is a concept that originates from the East, and that's going to decapitate. And once that happens, that is when the world, the last chapter will commence, i.e., the physical resurrection, the last judgment. And after the last judgment, paradise, that's when the world will end.
Just because you said you'd be the last person born.
Yes. So he'll be the last. So after that, there'll be nobody born.
So he'd be born.
Yes.
And then, so people would know this is going to happen because no one would be born for like.
Repeat, sorry.
After he's been born,
yes.
that second, then nobody else will be born for the next like 12.
That's a logical conclusion. Yes.
So people would notice.
Yeah.
Yes, people will. Yes.
Interesting time.
Yes. And the Zoroastrians see that they are kind of, that every time, the way it was in the scriptures, that you see we have had saviors down the ages, coming down, but the last human being, which is the literal word, is the savior. You see, every time that the world seems to be getting into a much more harsher place, that every time humans feel that yes, they have triumphed, they have done good, but suddenly things tend to change. And once again, again we have to, sort of climb the hill, in a sense, or overcome the hurdle to defeat evil, and we should not despair. But yes, that will be the sign that there will be no other humanity born after that.
Is there like guides about what is good, like, and is a version of like the Ten Commandments, or do you judge that for yourself? And if so, what about insane people?
Okay, fair question. All right, what is good and what is evil? I think as society, as civilization, humanity has developed, I think we have all began to agree that there are certain universal norms of what is good and what is evil. So for instance, death, carnage, rape, genocide, I think nobody today in their right mind will say that is good. We all find it abhorrent. Even those, I can think of, like 2 years ago with the Archbishop of Canterbury, the chief rabbi, and other religious leaders of the UK, we visited Auschwitz. And one of the things that just struck me, that even though the perpetrators of Auschwitz, they claimed that what they were doing was for the benefit of humanity. and they were proud, but yet they set about destroying their records. And that to me automatically says that however much they were trying to convey or deluding themselves, but they knew within themselves what they were actually doing was wrong. Otherwise, they would not have destroyed what they were doing. And that is what I'm saying, there are certain universal good and evil. There are other matters, yes, there are other aspects that can be challenging, which are on daily life situations. Should I do this or should I not do that, kind of thing. That is, at times are more difficult, to overcome. But on certain universal bases, I think they're obvious. Human rights. For instance, this, I don't know if you're familiar or anybody's seen this particular photograph. So I'll pass this around. This is called the Cyrus cylinder. King Cyrus is seen the father of the Iranian nation state. And those amongst you are familiar with the Jewish scriptures of the Old Testament is mentioned in Isaiah 2 as Cyrus the Anointed. Cyrus is a Persian king, and within his lifetime from 652 BC, within 20 years, the Persian or Iran had come to world notice. Because from a small kingdom in southwest Iran, the Persian Empire expanded to what's the borders of China to the borders of Egypt. Including what today is Pakistan. Central Asia all the way towards Turkey. After Cyrus died, the Egyptian empire, Libya, was brought into the Persian Empire. One of the first things what Cyrus, the Persians did, they went into Babylon, which is Iraq is next door to Iran, even today. And there they found the Jews who were in captivity, who were brought in from what is Judea, Israel, Palestine. Palestine was not there at that time, but Judea, Israel. And the important thing was this, that Cyrus decreed that, look, if you don't want to stay here, if you want to go back home, feel free to do so. And some of the Jews decided that, yes, they wanted to go back to Jerusalem and build the temple and all that. So the second temple which today is just the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, if you look at the architecture of the Western Wall, it's very similar to ancient Persian architecture, which is also found in Iran today. The big boulders. So there are ways of charity and things like that where people can help. And this particular cylinder of human rights was what Cyrus decreed, that whether you believe in a monotheistic religion or a polytheistic religion, you can practice your own religion, as long as you do not challenge the Persian order. If you do that, then of course we'll come down here like a ton of bricks. But otherwise, if you can go along with your own culture, you can go along with your own way of life. And the ancient historians looked at the Persian society relatively compared to the previous Babylonians and the Assyrians, or even the Egyptians, as a better harmonious society than what was there before, even after, even when the Greeks came. Because Alexander, to us, Alexander the Accursed is not the Great, who defeated the Persian Empire, even that brought a lot of carnage and destruction. But in many walks of society, the Persian Empire was seen the golden age, because following what Alexander destroyed, there was rampant inflation. There were no banks. People could not deposit their money. All the sort of the artisans, the engineers who were building the big civic projects were all made unemployed because there was no jobs for them. So there were various other ways, when people looked at it. So that's what the Cyrus cylinder is housed in the British Museum. And in fact, in the United Nations, they see that particular as the first charter of the human rights. So and some people say, no, that's a lot of all nonsense. It's just sheer Persian propaganda. But whatever it is, but that is what the Cyrus cylinder is represented. Any other questions?
Yeah, you said that I just need to clear it up and I understand. You said, are people allowed to convert?
Zoroastrians don't believe in that.
So you're a closed group, no one's allowed in?
No, but at the end of the day, it's a free world. So there are today, you see what is happening is this, that religion is seen by the numerical strength. Even today, the larger the religion is seen as got more potency. So there are some Zoroastrians from the beginning of the 20th century who were concerned that, look, we have to grow numerically to have a mark, to make a mark. So they broke away and some of them started to convert. So what we have today, we have a very federal structure in Zoroastrianism, whereby one group cannot oversee the other group. They are all on a similar plane. So some Zoroastrians, more so in North America, will choose to convert. The British group, as such, which I represent, which I today happen to be the elected president of, we do not convert.
We don't allow people to convert?
No, we do not allow people to convert. Having said that, but there's a what we are saying is this, because I said that if, for instance, say in a walk of what are you saying when you're religiously converting? You are basically saying intellectually that the religion which I'm practicing just now, or whether I was born into, is not good enough for me. I find Y religion better than the X religion I'm in. So by extension, what you're saying is this, that okay, this is better, so I'm moving to a better religion. So then if you're on the other side, if you are saying that all religions come from God, and the definition of God is that's omniscient, all-knowing, then one is saying, okay, has God made a mistake? That if this religion is not good for the other religion. Other factor is that what Zoroastrians see, that you can share things. You don't necessarily have to be that, oh, I'm going to jump ship all the time.
And how about if I was an atheist and I had no religion to start with? How would you view that?
In ancient time as such, you see, atheism is much more seen as a European phenomenon in a sense, in many ways. If you look at it in the post sort of the age of Renaissance, age of in the Victorian times, in most people in the East, yes, they can be more humanistic, they can be more sort of agnostic at times, but very few that come and say, look, we are totally atheists, where we say, okay, God does not exist. And there is, in most of the Eastern world, there is some sort of, not necessarily have to be a religious aspect, but in the case of Jewish case, for giving an example, it's also a way of life. So, you do get the concept of saying, yes, there are Jewish atheists, for instance. Because, for the Jewish community, there is this element that there is a cultural element to it as well. And that is what I'm saying. So therefore, if you're coming back to saying, all right, you come to a Zoroastrian and say, look, I'm a total atheist. Okay, fair enough. We accept that. We are not disputing that you're not an atheist. But what we'll say to you, that is fine. But we would not say, okay, we would not admit you as part of our group. But if you want to set up your own one, we'll show you what Zoroastrianism is and what we believe in. And then you go about and set up your own grouping. Now that may not be satisfactory, I accept that. But this is how we are.
It's just quite closed.
It is quite close in many ways, but yet at the same time, we are still very open, because see, when those, especially the interfaith arena, when somebody comes to us in interfaith visit, they know that they can relax, that we are not trying to covertly trying to sort of nab them and bring them to become a Zoroastrian. They're quite sort of open, and we are willing to answer whatever questions they have, whatever curiosity they have about it. But unlike history has shown that there are other religious groups, the history of other religions has shown at times that there have been at quiet time that you do this only if you become part of us. Zoroastrians never believed in that. We are saying, okay, you don't have to be part of us. If you want to go to school, yes, these are Zoroastrian schools, they're open to everybody. These are Zoroastrian hospitals, they're open to everybody, kind of thing. You do not have to be a Zoroastrian to benefit from Zoroastrian charity at times.
Well, that philosophy is good, it's just the other part that's disagreeable, but
that's fine. I fully understand that. But yet at the same time, the Zoroastrians, you see, in our history, we have done at times when we are expansionists, yes, we have done, I'm sure we've done negative things. But one of the things one cannot finger point Zoroastrians and say, yes, we have gone to war in the name of religion. That is something nobody so far, no critic of Zoroastrian has said that you have gone to war and converted people and thereby done destruction because of the name of God. That Zoroastrians have not done so in our history. Sorry.
you talk about people converting into your religion. Do you have a lot of people converting out of it? And also, do you intermarry? And if you intermarry, is it the child? Which faith does the child follow?
Okay. Zoroastrians take a dim view of people converting out. Yes, one of the reasons we are small is because people have either been killed or have converted out. Especially most of the last millennium. Now, at the dawn of the 20th century, the Zoroastrian population in the world, which is mainly in Iran and India, was about 90,000. In India, which is at that time undivided into India and what today is Pakistan, it was about around about 80,000. In Iran, our population depleted to about 7,000. The situation of Zoroastrian in Iran was, if I can draw a parallel, it was worse than the African American. It was more akin to Native American Indian. We were treated as subhumans. So in those days, and coming back to the question what you were asking, you would not be seen dead being a Zoroastrian. People did not want to convert to being a Zoroastrian because life was miserable. There were certain petty things that you could not wear spectacles. You could not ride a horse. These were enshrined into Iranian penal code. There were things like that. You could not have a house which has more than one single story. So life was pretty hard for the Zoroastrian. Now, as the 20th century progressed, the world became a smaller place. And we met people like other walks of life, other religions. So yes, mixed faith marriages happen to increase. Zoroastrians have, being a minority religion, we have had a short stroke. So where we today are, where our members of our community reside in the Islamic Republic of Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. If a Zoroastrian, which is then as known as the Parsis, or Persian, happen to marry the majority community, the Muslim community, there's no way that the Muslim spouse can become a Zoroastrian. It has to be the other way around. This is what the Islamic Republic code states for. So there's no way, if you convert them, you have got problems. Where does this religious conversion or the luxury of religious conversion come? It's more to liberal societies like India, which is a secular country, the United Kingdom, Western Europe, places like that. But even so in the United Kingdom, where this year the organization which I represent, the Zoroastrian Trust from the Bureau, it was established in 1861. So this year we're celebrating the 150th anniversary. And we're the oldest religious organization in the UK of South Asian origin. But what today we understand interfaith, multiculturalism is only about 20 odd years old, really. Yes, you had the union of Christian and Jews and things like that, before, just after the Second World War, or the World Congress of Faith, etc. But yet, Britain even was predominantly very much a Church of England country. Even being a Catholic was not a good idea, especially in this parts of the world, like Yorkshire, and because I studied at Teesside, and I know talking to my Catholic friends, and they used to say, hey, at times it's still difficult. And we used to know that people come from Northern Ireland at times. It's just come and say, are you a Catholic? And it's just going bashed, by people there, just totally out of the blue. So these things were there. So coming to interfaith marriage, so it is a challenge for us. And the other factor is this, coming back to the answer of religious conversion, is this, that one of the symptoms of persecution has been that our religious intelligentsia has been wiped out as well. So even though if we choose to convert, we do not quite know how to convert. Because there are not that many amongst us who can actually propagate what our religion is about, in a sense. And I think this is nothing unique. If you stop, say, the majority religion in this country or in England is the Church of England. If you stop the average person on the street and ask them what the Church of England believes in, the percentage will be small. So similarly, the Zoroastrian percentage is equally small, but because magnitude-wise we are small, so there were less people to explain what Zoroastrian is about. So when you convert, it's not just sheer conversion, it's about sustaining the person's belief to grow and nurture, and that also we find challenging. And to answer your final question about the child, what happens traditionally, the Zoroastrians have the paternal, so it's the father's religion. that unlike the Jewish part or in India, the Keralites have the mother's side. But the Zoroastrian is the father. So if your father is a Zoroastrian, then the child, whoever the mother is, whether it's a Zoroastrian or non-Zoroastrian, the child can be duly initiated into the faith as such. Now, that's how the traditional groups do it. In North America, they are much more egalitarian about it. In the UK, again, the organization I represent, again, we have a paternal link on